We're just generally extremely appreciative of the time it takes and the effort for people to attend, our events. A lot of people travel a long way to be there. They invest a lot, not just in money, but in also their time away from their families, time away from the office. We have to acknowledge that. And, the whole purpose of IMEX is that it makes people's lives easier, really, to do their jobs in the events industry. They make contacts there and relationships, able to do business. It saves them lots and lots of trips around the world. That's the whole idea of it. So it's our duty really to get to know the people properly and design a show that's for them.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Events Cast. How are you all doing today? I am really excited that you have decided to join me here today for this episode. I am Francesca, your host, and today I have a great guest episode. Today we're talking with Oliver Bailey from IMEX. Yes, we're back with another IMEX episode, but today we're talking about experience and about the IMEX experience that you may very well know, and if not, you should definitely listen to this episode and hear more. But we talk about what goes behind building this IMEX experience. Oliver really takes us behind the scenes and shows us what makes it special for them, why they really dedicate so much time, why they dedicate so much effort in making amazing experiences for their audience. And this was a great conversation with Oliver. Oliver, he's been over 25 years in the events industry. He's one of the long-standing members of IMEX team with over 20 years there, which you'll hear all about. And he takes us a bit back in time and tells us how IMEX has changed, which was really cool to hear. And most of all, Ollie lives and breathes experiences. He studied human interaction design, which you can really see how he is applying this to live events. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure you are too. So do make sure to listen right into the end. And if you do enjoy this conversation, don't forget to share it with someone who you think might enjoy it too. There's a lot of event marketers out there. There's a lot of event professionals out there who would probably really appreciate listening to this episode. So be a good colleague, be a good friend, be a good event fellow marketer, and send it to someone who you think may enjoy it too. Post on your LinkedIn or X or wherever you hang out online and let the whole world find it. I'd appreciate you for that, and I'm sure your colleagues will do that too. And just before we do go into this episode, I want to let you know that we have a lot of amazing episodes coming really soon, coming your way. So if you're not yet subscribed, if this is the first time you're listening, or if you've been listening for some time but haven't yet subscribed, click that button now. You're not going to want to miss anything of it. And now let's stop the ramble, let's get into it. You're in for a long ride, you're in for a great one. So sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to the Events Cast, a podcast to help event professionals attract more attendees and grow their events. Through weekly interviews with event professionals and solo episodes with myself, you'll learn practical tips and strategies to better market your events. I'm your host, Francesca Bellit, and I'm the co-founder of BBR Web Design and a marketing coach helping event producers achieve their marketing goals with a conversion-optimized event website. If you need support with your event websites or marketing, visit theeventscast.com to check out how we can work together. And while you're there, explore some of the freebies made just for you. And now for today's episode. Hello, Oliver, and welcome to the Events Cast. How are you doing today?
Very good, very good. Nice. Thanks for asking me. Very nice to meet you. Yeah, we're all good, thank you. We just finished our Frankfurt event, so we're gearing up to our America event now. So we're in a good place to talk about things. We're kind of in the middle of both shows now.
No, thank you for being here with me today. It is lovely to be sitting down with you here on this sunny Friday, talking about experiences and talking about event experiences, and specifically the experience that you build at IMEX. We were just talking about it beforehand, before we clicked the record here, how this episode's been in my mind for quite a long time, because when Karina was on the episode, on the show, already about months ago, maybe a year ago. She talked about you and your team, about the experiences you build. She hyped you up quite a bit, I must say. So it's been in my mind since then to bring yourself onto the show to talk about these experiences, to take us behind the scenes, showing us what it is you do at IMEX, why you do it, and how you do it. So I'm really looking forward to having that conversation with you. But just before we get started, just before we go into the nitty-gritty of it, I would love to hear more about you, what it's that you do, and how you got into the lovely world of events.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I never studied anything in events as such. I mean, we're going back a long time now, so I'm not even quite sure that there were professional qualifications in events when I was starting out. My background was in art, and then I went on to study philosophy at university. Did very many things in between that and where I am now, and traveled quite a bit. I've been with IMEX for 20 years now, so I was one of the early adopters, the early people to join the company. Much, much smaller team then. We only had the one show back then. But it's been fantastic to not just to build the show, but help shape the company as well. And hopefully, along the way, make some contributions towards the industry as a whole, and influence how we all operate. I did take a bit of time at one point to then go back and go study again human interaction design, which is kind of user experience, really UX, as some people would know it. And it's been interesting to try and apply some of those principles to the way that we work in live events. Because I've got an operations background, really, but I like to get involved in lots of things. An interesting aspect of the work that we do, because you mentioned that you'd been interested in our team. Well, one way that we structure things here at IMEX is that we have our sort of core teams, but then we have a lot of project groups. And I think in particular, when it comes to something like the experience, you want to get a good overview of the whole exhibition that you're working on. So the team isn't really a team as such, but it's a collective of people from all different teams. So then it's really great, because then you can get a really great idea of what's happening where, and ideas can sort of cross pollinate, and someone's ideas in their operations capacity might influence somebody in sales or in the hosted buyer team and things like that. And then you end up with more of a kind of unified view of things, and a much better picture of what's happening and where, because events are big things. It's very hard to get that big overall picture otherwise.
That's really interesting to hear how you bring in a lot of different people involved in from different departments into this team. So I'm just curious to know if there is people out there wondering what some of the key roles that should be involved in this team, if they're maybe considering assembling a team, or they have one but it's not really formed yet, or they do and they just want to check if they've got the right people on them. Who are the key roles? What are some of those key roles, key people you think need to be on this experienced team?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm kind of acting as the facilitator, really, the person that draws the things together, organises the meetings and actions things. It's very important to have people in an operations capacity there, because if you're looking at anything that requires logistics, they're the specialists there. So people that know about electrical connections, and they know about forklifts, they're comfortable backing in a lorry driver, that kind of thing. Equally, you want somebody there from a communications or marketing capacity, because quite a lot of the time, communications is a very important aspect of preloading an experience, talking about an experience in advance, or talking about it after or during. Quite a lot of the time, these sort of activations and experience can generate fantastic content, but you've got to be ready to talk about it. And then similarly, from a sales point of view, and in our case, we have a team dedicated to the buyers, because we host a lot of the buyers to our show. And they form the largest group of people that actually participate in the events. So that's who it's all about, really. So you need representation from those two camps to make sure that we're designing for the right people, because they understand their clients and the people that they speak to every day very, very well indeed. A lot of them have been coming back to the show for as long as I've been around. And so they're the experts in those relationships. They know them personally, and that's so valuable and so essential, because getting to that point of empathy with the people that we're designing for is the state we want to be, and it's kind of impossible unless you can relate to people on a very personal level.
Yeah, so that's great to hear about the team, and I think it's really important, really, to have those different pieces, like you say, to really connect with the personas and to really bring experts
Mm.
also from each of their fields. And it's really interesting to hear. And what I'm really curious to understand is, you said you've been there for 20 years, practically since the beginning, one of the early team
Mhm.
members. So I'm just really curious to know how it's really changed, how IMEX has changed in the last 20 years, and especially from the perspective of these experiences. Has this always been
Mm.
something you focused as much attention on, or has it evolved over time? Or just, yeah, just curious to understand really the difference from like back then to now on this regard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's probably both, really, in that yes, we've always thought about it, but yes, it has also evolved. Because when we first started out, it was a smaller team, and the events industry was different back then as well. It was a lot less nuanced in terms of the experience of the attendees. Technology wasn't around, of course, to facilitate a lot of the things we take for granted now. There was no smartphones even. Imagine that. So a lot of the things that we take advantage, like apps and things, weren't around, and people just had to find their way around a lot of the time and just by their own steam. So there was a lot of more emphasis on navigation, which we still have, but it was just a different kind of a way. So definitely with technology moving forward, it's changed a little bit. But we would focus more on the basic things. If I don't, some of you listen to this are going to be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which, if you're not looking it up, it's easier to look at a picture than me to try and explain it. But basically, the idea is that at the very basic level, you've got the basic human needs, like need for water, food, things like that. Then after that, shelter, comfort, and then as you go up and up and up, you lead to like the higher ends of things where it's self-actualization, spiritual fulfillment, and things like that. So um, you have to make sure you've got the real basics right before you can actually progress to those other things. And when you start launching a new show, sure, you're going to make mistakes, and then things might be in the wrong place, and there's lots of shuffling things around before you can get into a settled position where you can start moving up the strata and think, right, we've got the catering sorted out now. People are happy with that. We know nobody's going to be hungry. Nobody's complained about parking or anything like that. So the logistics side of things is working. How can we then move on to greater ideas of fulfillment? And that's when you start developing and iterating things like the education program and start working with the exhibitors to do their events. And so where we're at now is working with sponsors to really give them a better idea of what works and being able to give them measurements and metrics around the show and things like that. And really embrace the technology that we've got these days and all the experience that we've got from other shows to get to those finer nuanced levels of making the show better and making their participation better as well. And sometimes it's tiny increments because all the low-hanging fruit's long gone now. But it's those tiny increments that really make all the difference now, I think.
And that's a great comparison there to make, and seeing also the difference of reading 20 years, also how it's really changed and how you do just improve small little bits. I think even it was Karina who was mentioning something like small little difference. Like I think one year that you put, I think she just mentioned something like some on the floor, like these rainbows or up the stairs or something like that, of how like everyone just loved that so much. So then it was on socials all around, something that
Mm,
you also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that you weren't expecting it to be such a big hit, but then obviously like just small little bits like that then you take it onto the next year, it's kind of
mm.
already there. So then next year you come up with new ideas, and obviously over years you do have this whole experience piece. I'm just curious then to know, like, you said it's come with time. It's not always been there.
Mm,
Obviously, there are shows that start or launch off like we're building it to be an experience. We're building from day one. It's evolved over time.
mm,
What does like nowadays? What does the experiential part of the event mean for like for you personally and for your events? Like, why do you think it's so important, and why do you focus so much attention of
mm,
having a dedicated team like yourself and involving all these other team members that I bet we all in events, we know how it is. I can imagine the marketer and the
mm.
spares person you have involved also so worried about their own part that it's, how do you really justify all that to come together, to come into play? Why do you think it's so important to really focus so much attention on this part of the event?
Yeah, really great question. I think we're just generally extremely appreciative of the time it takes and the effort for people to attend, our events. A lot of people travel a long way to be there. They invest a lot, not just in money, but in also their time away from their families, time away from the office. And we have to acknowledge that. And the whole purpose of IMEX is that it makes people's lives easier, really, to do their jobs in the events industry. They make contacts there and relationships, able to do business. It saves them lots and lots of trips around the world. That's the whole idea of it. So it's our duty, really, to get to know the people properly and design a show that's for them. And that's really what it's all about. So first of all, understanding the people is vitally important, and finding out not just their journey through our show, but what else is going on in their lives. Because we don't want to be having people dance to the beat of our drum. We want to fit in around their cadence and their, the pace of their lives. And then when people are actually at the event, it's about removing friction as much as we can, so people can get to do what they want to do with fewer steps. And then also make it a joyful experience. We want people to really love being there. I know it's a busy time, but we don't want people to leave there feeling broken. We want people to feel fulfilled, So it's not just a question of getting these things done, doing the business, meeting the people, making the contacts. There's also has to be some personal fulfillment there. And I think that's more and more important these days, I think, because there's so much more choice around. But we generally love the people that attend our show, and we want to do the best for them. And I think that is genuinely the desire and the drive behind all of this. And it's the reason why we've made it one of our key core company values and vectors for success, the experience of the event. Because it is a live event, that's really what it's all about. And the people that come here, they make it. It's not our show, it's theirs.
That's so nicely put there. And it sounds difficult though. Like you said, you're thinking of the experience at the event, but also what happens before. And I also guess you don't just have a single audience coming to your event, you've got multiple audiences there. You need to think about all these different people. And you also touched on something there, that you're bidding this experience, but also for them to be able to choose their own experience, for them to be able to live their own experience as they want. You're not like forcing you're not putting on the like one element of the show and forcing everyone to live in it. You want them to pick their experience and take their journey. How do you do that? How do you start thinking about this? What does that look like?
Yeah, that is interesting. There's lots of different aspects to that, really, and it's all based around getting to know the people and finding ways to observe it as well and measure it. One thing that we realised that was very interesting was that our show is way bigger than our show that we put on. If you look at the experience of the people who attend, it's much bigger than just the event that we hold in an exhibition centre or a hotel. There's the whole arrival experience, the transport experience, getting from the airport or the train station to their hotel. How is that? And then all the things that happen in the evening that we don't actually organise, the parties. I'm sure a lot of business gets done at the bar. That's probably a huge part of events sometimes. And I think as planners, we tend to really focus on the things that are in our immediate sphere of control, the things that we pay for, essentially. Where in actual fact, if you put yourself in the position of the people who attend and visit, it's this whole ensemble experience with all these different fringe events as well. So understanding, first of all, what those touch points are is very important, because then you can look at ways in which you can try and even that experience out so that everybody has a certain level, a standard. You can say, well, let's try and raise that minimum experience. I mean, some experiences are going to be different depending on where people are staying and how they're traveling, but you want to try and ensure at least some kind of minimum standards. So you think, well, this is good. We want to make sure everybody is at least here. Some people may be up here, but at least here. So understanding, first of all, where those touch points are, then you can think about how to do it. And it may not be immediately obvious, and you may have to work with lots of different people. but it's quite interesting to do that exercise. And one way that we managed to do that was using using this. We're using the things that we all carry around with us every day. And it used to be that when you wanted to do that kind of research, you'd do a diary studies exercise. So you'd recruit a focus group of people, and then you'd ask them to literally keep a diary of their day to day. How was it? How was the food? And then maybe give them some prompts. And then you rely on them to feed that information. First of all, to actually do that, which is a big ask when you're in the midst of a busy event and they're getting asked out for dinner and things. And then they'd have to then feed that back to you. Now we all have mobile devices. It's brilliant because you have a camera, a video recorder, and people are messaging all the time. It's very easy for people to do all of that in the moment with very rich content. We used a company called Indemo that does exactly that. It's mobile ethnography, essentially. It's feedback in the moment. So with that kind of feedback, then you're getting this much richer information about someone's journey through and what's important to them. So you know what's important to you, the big things that you've worked on all year, but it might not be important to them. What might be important to them would be getting a really good cup of coffee. And that might not be something that you work on, but for them it's important. So understanding the audience, their touch points, not yours, and what's important to them, I think, is the principal thing that anybody who's interested in designing from an experiential point of view should begin with as a foundation. And it might surprise you because it surprised us.
That's so curious. And I love what you're talking there about actually thinking about the experience, more of what happens out of the event. Obviously, you can control all the aspects of the event, or where you can control them more or less. But you're in control of the aspects. But yeah, especially like a show like you was a few days, people traveling, most the people like coming to Frankfurt, a great amount of your audience, I guess, aren't actually from Frankfurt, a lot from the UK, traveling from all around Europe, really, and around the world coming to your event. That the experience, what people do think of afterwards of IMEX is the whole part together. But do you then actually just understand that and try to obviously get to know the audience about those parts, and then what you can do, obviously knowing what's happening all around, do you bring elements into the actual event that can contribute to that? Or do you try to play a role in what's happening outside, maybe like helping them organize the travel or helping them stay? Like, I mean, that what you're talking about, the good is here, this is where you want everyone to do. Do you actually have hands on that, or are you just understanding that and then building it into the event?
Well, there's a limit to what anybody can control. It would be a great mistake for us to try and control everything that was going on. That would just simply be impossible, and you wouldn't be able to do it. And nor should we, because a lot of the time people are being taken out for dinner by the people who exhibit at the show, and it's their event, it's not ours. We wouldn't want to insert ourselves into that and get in the way and try and control it. But we do, spend a lot of time thinking about travel. We actually, for a lot of our buyers that attend the show, we actually organise that, we pay for their travel and we organise their accommodation. It's a big aspect of IMEX. So we are interested in the experience of those aspects. And one thing that we do try and do is work very closely with the host cities, because they have relationships with the hotels, they have relationships with the transport in the city, they have relationships with the airports and things like that. And so you can leverage the convention bureau in your host city to help with all these things. One thing that we did in Frankfurt with the Frankfurt Convention Bureau, all of the hotels where our buyers were staying, every buyer that checked in got a personal welcome from the Lord Mayor of Frankfurt, because they want people like that in their city. They organise that. So we're able to try and have a certain standard that everybody gets a welcome, because maybe some hotels before that were giving a welcome letter, maybe some others weren't, but the ones that were getting it loved it. So it seemed like an easy win. Let's make sure everybody gets a welcome letter. And then Frankfurt Convention Bureau said, well, hey, why don't we get a letter from us and the mayor? Even better, So there's things, once you start uncovering those touch points and you start thinking, well, how can we make that more standardized and better? And using those partner relationships that you already have, it can work really well. And, it's in the interest of the host city to do it. It's a great way for them to show just what they can do for organizers. So when a buyer comes to check into their hotel and they get a personal welcome from the city, the city is then saying, hey, look what we do for this organizer, we could do that for you as well. So you can form some great partnerships there to try and ease these touch points out, even if they are way beyond the Congress Centre and the Exhibition Centre and out in the city itself. That's where your host city or national convention bureau of where you're having your event can really, really shine.
You just really open up my mind of this whole perspective of experience of when you're thinking about it, because yeah, it's just making it whole, like now as you say, it just does sound so obvious of really the experience is more than what's just happening there. And because yeah, like whatever event you go to, if it is, even if it's a small concert or a small whatever you're going to, if it's in a really difficult location to get to, that really it's been really difficult for you to get there, come back, the experience on the way, doesn't mind how good the actual event was, the actual, if you're seeing, but you might not go back next year. You might not, or you might not remember as well. Because yeah, for you, for someone in their life, that's the whole piece that ends up building up. So that's why, like, it really is just opening my eyes of how to think of, even though, yeah, like you said, you don't have full control. It doesn't really, maybe that letter or whatever, it doesn't have to have your brand on it, but really thinking about it and making it just the whole experience does really contribute to your brand experience.
It does, absolutely that, because from the people who are attending, from their point of view, it's part of one ensemble. It's not, it's part of their visit. Same if you were going on a holiday, the flight is part of that holiday. If you have a terrible flight, it's gonna, it's going to be a negative point. It's not the fault of the destination, but it's, they're still going to be part of it. It's still going to affect them because they're arriving in a certain state of mind as well. And that's the other thing as well, because, if you can even out those experiences along the way, you can better predict them and predict how people are going to behave. Arrivals is very important to an event. And you try and imagine how people are going to be arriving based on, you can infer by how they were traveling. If someone's just on a long haul flight, we've all done long haul flights, so a lot of us have, how you feel when you get off at the other end. It's very different from just hopping on a train from an hour away. So you can kind of plan for that. So if you're able to sort of standardize the experience a little bit more, then you can better predict and plan for behavior as well.
And then it all comes back to what you were mentioning there very clearly, of the really getting to know your audience and understanding their journey. Because yeah, like what you even mentioned before, a cup of coffee, maybe it's not what you were thinking of for your event. It's not what's going to make or break your event, but maybe for someone who is coming from a long haul flight, or if you're just doing, if anyone maybe just having a 1-day conference in London, but that starts at 8 in the morning and you have people coming in from Manchester and they've been on a 3-hour train, well, maybe it's important for them. The first thing they get is a really nice cup of coffee as they walk in. I'm really like seeing it very differently right now, but just as we are a bit drawing to a more stable end, and I think like we should have scheduled more than half an hour for this, because I think that we could go into a lot of detail like that. But we are obviously talking here a lot of the things that are happening, of how the full experience, what can happen outdoors. But what are some of the things that you have worked on, or that you do work on, that actually happen at the show, that you think contribute to experience, things that have over years maybe that are really drawn on, some of those top IMEX experiences that people draw on?
Sure. Okay. Obviously, IMEX is a big event with lots of different aspects to it. So we're not trying to make it one big experience out of the whole thing. The stars of the show are our visitors and our exhibitors. So it's their show. One big exercise actually that we did a year ago was we refreshed our brand, and so we'd have the same kind of branding around IMEX for a long, long time. And the values and the messages around it are unchanged. They're constant, but we wanted to actually refresh it sort of visually from a design point of view to try and reflect more who we are really. Reflect the personality in the business a bit more. And we thought, what better place to launch that than at one of our key touch points, which is one of the 2 shows that we do, and it just so happened that Frankfurt was the one. So we spent a long time to wonder, how can we do this reveal, because we had a lot of good feeling about our brand. We'd built it over 20 years. A lot of people have been attending for that amount of time, so there was a lot of trust and there was a lot of kinship there. So we just wanted to build on that. So we wanted that same sense of belonging and ownership around the new branding. So we thought the best way to do that is to focus on the welcome experience. And so we have the reveal when people arrive. And we did work with the host cities, and in that instance, with Frankfurt and the GCB, they were able to give us branding around the airport for one thing. So we could just tease the brand in little ways with wonderful animation that we produced that didn't really do it in a very big way, but it was just subtle. And we did these little subtle reveals along the way. we actually went to Frankfurt, well, about a year before that, and literally walked all the different ways that we could imagine that people might actually arrive in there, and essentially just pretended to be them. It was a wonderful exercise because it really ended up allowing you to inhabit their spaces, if you like, and think how you feel. Because it's one thing if you draw up personas, but then actually acting that out takes it to the next level, if you like. And that was a wonderful exercise. If you can do that, I can recommend it. And what it allowed us to do was to realize that everybody converges at one point, which is actually a main atrium just outside of our main exhibition halls, which has beautiful natural light anyway. So we thought, right, this is where we're going to stage everything. And we created a giant IMEX logo out of powder-coated aluminium. It was monolithic proportions of about sort of, I don't know, 4 meters high as the focal point. And then we imagined that people were going to want to talk about that. They're going to see this branding for the first time if they were familiar with the old branding. So we essentially choreographed the photograph that they were going to take of that, and made it like the perfect photograph. It was very, very well balanced, symmetrical. So if you were going to photograph anything, you would do it there. Also, having the big 3-dimensional letters, it was very important that people go up and actually touch them. It's a live event, we can use sensors like smell and touch that you can't use in traditional advertising. So, and actually touching the brand, it sounds odd in a way, but there's a great image there, of belonging and acceptance that I thought was, a big step in getting that brand adoption. And it works out really well. And then for the rest of the show, we just alliterated those key patterns and the color palette through everything else. So it's sort of, we didn't want to dominate the space because, like I said, it's not our space, but we wanted people to feel like they were with us, or we were with them rather, along the way. So it's they wanted to feel comfortable that it was a different space to everywhere else that tied everything together, but without being too dominant. Yeah, so in a way, it was we just choreographed the experience of arrivals and gave them the focal point and then allowed them to interact with it. And the one thing that I regret actually is that we didn't have a professional photographer there to photograph the people. We left it for them to do selfies and photograph themselves. So, you live and learn.
I mean, that's really putting yourself in the shoes of your audience and walking their steps and going through their journey. And I think, like general, obviously, we could go into details here of talk about more specific experiences. And I know a lot of people, when they think of experience, sometimes it is just like, oh, put a DJ at the entrance or do these certain things. But I think there's been a really, really clear topic here from start to end that is really that importance of walking it in their shoes, being them, thinking of it, how they're going to experience it. And I love that you reveal a brand at an actual event, because I think that's a tricky one for many event planners when they have, when a brand's very, very ingrained in someone's mind, then a lot of organizers are scared of, do we rebrand? Do we not? Just that everyone really knows the brand. How do we do it? When do you do it? Did you do it pre-event? Do you do it post-event? What moment? But actually doing it at the event, that's really, really nice of bringing them into them and allowing them to, and really trying to foresee how they're going to live that. And I think that's really nice of everything we've touched on.
Well, we've branded in-house. So the rebrand was done by our design team here, and that was very, very important because a lot of love went into that. So everybody was very, very pleased and very proud of it, and I think that really came out. So there was, there's a lot of affection there, and I think hopefully that that was able to be transferred to the people when they arrived too.
Awesome. And Oliver, as I think we have already gone a bit over time. It's not a problem because it's been like a great conversation, but I am just bit bummed because I actually had so many more questions for you, so we might have to do a part 2.
That's great. I'd love to.
If anyone who hasn't been, I think a lot of people listening will know IMEX. They've probably lived the experience already, so it's probably given them a lot of inspiration to just really hear how it really, the behind the scenes and how it works and how you planned this. But for anyone who doesn't know IMEX, for anyone who hasn't been or does know but really haven't really gotten themselves around to it, where can people go to find out more about these experiences, see what you do, see what you personally work on, but also as a group?
We have different websites for the 2 shows. There's imexamerica.com or imexfrankfurt.com. You can just Google both of those. And there's lots and lots of content on there. Definitely lots of content worth going through. There's also an IMEX group website if you want to know more about just the company on a company level, which has a bit of a history there as well. But I would say, in the spirit of getting to know people and experience, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, find me on LinkedIn and ask me a question, connect with me, because I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your perspectives on things as well. So please don't be shy. It'd be lovely to make some new friends and, hear your feedback and your experiences too.
Awesome. Well, we'll include links to your LinkedIn, but also to the free websites on the show notes for whoever does want to go check it out. And yeah, if you haven't been there yet, go live it for yourself, the IMEX experience. And Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time out on this lovely Friday to sit down with me to talk about experience, to talk about IMEX, and just to get to know you a bit better. Really, really appreciate your time, and really been great speaking with you.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. And I look forward to maybe doing it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely have to do a part 2. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
What an episode, right? You've obviously made it right to the end. So you've seen all the gold that Oliver just shared with us there. Oliver, thank you so much for joining me, sharing your story, sharing all the details about how IMEX really makes true experiences with myself, with the audience, and thanks for being so generous in this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me and Oliver right to the end of this episode. I hope that you really have enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful, valuable. I hope that you can take some of the inspiration that Oliver's delivered to your own events, wherever it is that the aspect you're working on, whatever's your next live event or virtual event. I hope that you can take some of the things we've listened here with you to the show. I know there are some that I'm going to be taking. It's really made me think more about that wider experience that the guests are having around our show, not just at the show. And as you know, on the part of event marketing, I do websites. So I'm going to purposely see how we can incorporate more of these aspects of getting to know what the audience is doing around and building these into the journey of our audience on the website. So that's my commitment to this episode. I would love to hear yours. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed it, you might want to consider leaving a rating, leaving in a review for myself and for Oliver. We would really love to hear it. I read them all. I appreciate them all. So give me that gift and write me a little review wherever you are listening to it. Now, that is all for today. We are going to be back really soon with some other fantastic episodes. So, like I've already said at the beginning, subscribe if you haven't yet. And enjoy the rest of your day, wherever it is, morning, afternoon, evening, if you're out running, if you're cooking, cleaning, if you are at the gym, or maybe just sat back at your home relaxing or commuting to an event. Enjoy whatever it is you're doing. Thank you for tuning in with me. Thank you for joining me for this one. And I hope to see you really soon on another one. Bye for now.